Hey guys, it's Evan, the resident game master here at Chaotic Cast TV. Welcome to our top 5 videos. We're going to be covering all things and topics about D&D. Some of these are opinions and others will be rules and options that are listed within the various source books, up to Fizzbands currently. So, as more source books come out, we will go from there and try to make updated content. We may not go back and edit videos or just go from this point forward. But if you do like what you see and you find this helpful at all, hit the subscribe button to become part of the chaos. Hit the bell icon to get alerts when new videos will drop. Giveaways are coming, so join us. We would like to thank Dwayne's World for all their awesomeness and D&D Beyond for having the resources to allow us to make these videos. Now, let's get to the top 5. Today it's going to be cantrips, but more specifically, damaging cantrips. I tried to pick top 5 just out of the cantrips as a whole, but there's so many different options with cantrips, and I feel like cantrips are such an important choice, especially at the beginning when you're creating your character. You get 3, 4, 5, depending on what character you're making. These are important because this is like the innate spells that your character knows. These usually aren't replaceable, reversible, interchangeable, depending on your DM, but for the most point, these are a solid choice at the beginning, so let's get it right. On the list, I got number 5 as Sacred Flame. Sacred Flame takes 1 action to cast. It's damage, clearly. That's what all these will be. Only thing is, it's got a little bit of a class restriction. Pretty big class restriction. Hitting for clerics only. But just the way the spell works is good, especially level 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it'll grow with your character over time. So we're looking at 1 action to cast, 60-foot range or area. Your components are verbal and somatic. Duration's instantaneous. The School of Magic is evocation. The attack save is a dexterity saving throw. Damage and effect is radiant damage. Some key pieces to point out there. Magic damage early, radiant damage. Early game, you're not going to find a whole lot of monsters that your DM is going to be throwing at you. Or if you are a DM, there's very few magical items or pieces of things that aren't homebrew. Now, homebrew you can do a lot of different things with. But you're not going to find a whole lot of resistance to radiant unless you're getting into some celestial plane crossing, that type of stuff. Or maybe, some more darker creatures from the void planes, the astral sea, some things that might have some sort of radiant resistance, but chances are they're going to be vulnerable to radiant damage. The definition is a flame-like radiance descends on a creature that you can see within range. The target must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or take 1d8 radiant damage. The target gains no benefit from cover for the saving throw. And what I was talking about earlier, the spell increases over time. It increases 1d8. Once you hit level 5, 2d8, level 11, 3d8, level 17, 4d8. To have a cantrip that you can just burn mid-game and you're dropping 2d8, 3d8 on a monster, even the monsters, once you get up to a challenge rating of 5-ish, 3, 4, 5-ish, depending on what all your DM does, what books he's using to pull monsters from, what he's creating, you're looking at magic damage when other things may be resistant to all non-magical damage with a cantrip. Dexterity saving throw. Make sure your spell DC is as high as it can be, which if you are casting and you are a cleric, your wisdom should be super high, getting up at least 18 or 20 to start out with. So you're looking at a spell DC of 14-ish, 15. It's a great cantrip starting out, especially for clerics who are predominantly healers. Number 4, Mind Sliver. Fairly new kind of spell. It's the same kind of casting time. We have 1 action, range and area, 60 feet, very similar to what Sacred Flame was. The component's just verbal. There's no somatic motion. There's nothing you got to burn up, toss into the atmosphere to be atomized so you can cast this. You just mumble some sort of arcane translation or incantation into your chosen target's ears for it to rattle their brain. The duration is instantaneous. School is enchantment. Attack is an intelligence save, which is very rare amongst monsters, especially ones that aren't some form of humanoid or live in a civil society or something like that. So most of your beast monsters, or monsters that, you know, do not just have intellect, like they are brainless. So you're talking a lot of stuff that has low intelligence, goblins and any kind of animalistic monster, any kind of like amoeba, ooze, that all those just different non-human like monsters. You know, that's an early damage, and then this thing does psychic damage, which you're not going to find many resistances to psychic damage either, kind of sort of like radiant. Something important about this though, as we read in the description, check this out. You drive a disorienting spike of psychic energy into the mind of one of the creatures you can see within range. The target must succeed on an intelligence saving throw or take 1d6 psychic damage and subtract 1d4 from the next saving throw it makes before the end of your turn. Not only are you going to hurt this thing, you're going to turn around and make them have to subtract 1d4 when your partner drops something else where they have to make a saving throw on. 1d4 early game, guys, cantrip. It can mean a lot. 1d4 late game. If you guys are fans of Critical Role, I'm a huge fan of Critical Role. Campaign 2, Caduceus was so adamant, and Taliesin reminding 1d4, take it off or put it on, depending on if you use Bless or Bane. 1d4 can change the outcome of every single fight in the game. The smallest dice in the game, huge, huge impact. This spell also damage increases over time. It's only a 1d6, but once you hit level 5, 2d6, 11, 17, kind of the same thing, 3d6, 46. This is a stout little spell for what it can do. One of our players right now in our campaign, Newt, he's using Mind Sliver. It worked in the last session we played. The monster that they were fighting had to roll a d4, failed the saving throw. Big deal, big deal. And this one's a little bit more broad on who can actually cast this. It's available for sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. So all of those availability for the classes depends on what your DM wants to do. Sometimes, you know, those restraints are taken off a little bit, some stick to it. But at least with this one, there's 3 different classes you can choose from. Number 3, Toll the Dead. There's a lot to love with this spell. It really is. It being cantrip, number 1. Casting time, 1 action, range and area 60 feet. You're going to see that a lot with your cantrips. It's kind of like the, you know, we're making mashed potatoes, so the main ingredients are potatoes. But the components with it are verbal and somatic. Duration is instantaneous. School necromancy. Attack or save is a wisdom save. And damage and effect is necrotic. Again, when you're picking your cantrips, without, you know, you don't have to be metagaming to choose spells like this. Make sure it fits your person. Pick whatever spells you want at the end of the day. But when you're looking for damage or effects that aren't going to be heavily resisted against, try to choose those more crazy ones that do not include cold, fire, lightning, those sort of things. Let's go for some unforeseen or outlier damages. And that's why necrotic is listed here, and that's why Toll the Dead made my top 5. You point at one creature you can see within range, and the sound of a dolorous bell fills the air around it for a moment. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or take 1d8 necrotic damage. Stout. But as we've learned with the other ones, what else does it do? If the target is missing any of its hit points, you roll a 1d12. Now, if you want to play the average game, one of our players, Hunter, he likes to calculate the numbers and figure out if 2d6 is better than 1d12, what the average is of the dice rolls and all this sort of stuff. When he makes his characters and he plays the game, he wants the highest output that he can possibly have, the optimal build for his character. So, I mean, when you look at that, if you're rolling a 1d8, you got a chance to roll a 1 through 8. If you're rolling a 1d12, you have a chance to roll a 1 through 12. Numbers are clear. 1d12 is going to potentially do more damage. If you don't go first in the order, with this one, you are a warlock, wizard, or cleric. Chances are your initiative isn't much higher than 14 based on your dexterity, unless you just want to be a super fast person that's like that and you want to go first. It's something that someone else, if you have a rogue or a monk or a dexterous fighter, somebody with high dexterity going before you, you don't want to burn any level spells right now, or maybe you're tapped from fights before, you could potentially damage 12 points of damage right after one of your friends go against a monster. Pretty significant. especially for a cantrip. The spell damage increases also 2d8 or 2d12, 3d8 or 3d12. You know, the same pattern, 5, 11, 17 level-wise. Late game, say you're not level 18, 19, even 20 late game. You've been in some fight trying to save the world. You're getting ready to get to the BBEG. You're trying to save as many of your big spells as you can because you know this fight's coming, but your DM's throwing these little waves of creatures just to make you burn some things. And you can drop potentially 4d12, potentially 48 points of damage onto a waiting monster that's already took some damage or hurting or burning through all of these random waves of goblins or skeleton warriors or whatever it is. You're doing massive amount of damage potentially to these. And it's cool. It costs nothing. It's just awesome spell. Number 2. Eldritch Blast. Or, I probably already sound like Ford saying it, but, you know, I'm from Tennessee. Sorry that I have a southern accent, but even southerners can love D&D too. But, so, anyway, Eldritch Blast. Interesting spell. Stinks that it's only able for the warlock, just like Sacred Flame's only for the cleric and those other 3. But here's another thing I just want to remind everyone about. Even though these are class specific now, I think Tasha's, the Magic Initiate feats came out. So even if you can't take it level 1, at level 4, which is still, we're talking pretty early. I don't know many DMs that start out at level 1 anyway. Most DMs are hitting, you know, the beginning episode 0 or 1, with characters or a party that's collective levels 2, 3. And some people even start 4, 5, 6. So if you're already starting up that high anyway, where you're just going to wait 1 or 2 levels to get it, you can take Magic Initiate, Warlock. You can get Eldritch Blast, which gives you 120 feet range. The components are verbal, somatic, instantaneous, school evocation. It's a ranged attack roll, and the damage is force. I'll pause right there. Tell me what monster is resistance to force right off the top of your head. I read monsters all day. And I can't tell you right now one right off the top of my head that's not allergic to force. They're all resistant to it. There are some, I'm sure, out there. I just don't know what they are right off the top of my head. I'd say it's rare. So that being the fact of the matter, Eldritch Blast is awesome. A beam of crackling energy streaks towards a creature within range. You make a ranged spell attack against a target. On a hit, the target takes 1d10 force damage. Straight up. There's no extra effects with Eldritch Blast. I guess it factors in the range. It can go double what most other cantrips can, and it's going to grow as you go. The cool thing about Eldritch Blast is it's not going to grow in damage, so to speak. The spell creates more beams the higher levels you get. 5th, you get 2s, 11, 3, 17, 4. But what makes this spell really cool is you can start directing it towards different people, different enemies in your encounter. So if you're fighting 4 goblins, you walk up, you could burn. These are wave killing machines. Warlocks are, period. But Eldritch Blast enables that to an extent. You burn a feat, late feat, you've done got your character going good the way you want them. You just need a cantrip where you can mow through some things. Eldritch Blast all day. You can hit them from 120 feet range. Chances are they can't hit you from that far. You're just spamming Eldritch Blast. If you play any sort of MMORPG, this is your number 1. This is your cue. You're just wearing it out. Number 1. My favorite tried and true spell of all time. Firebolt. It is a classic. It should be picked with every one of my classes, characters that I make. If I make a high elf, you can bet your best dollar that my cantrip of choice is going to be Firebolt. Casting time is 1 action, range is 120 feet. The components are verbal and somatic. Duration is instantaneous. The school's evocation. It's a ranged attack roll. Your damage is fire. The reason why I like fire, but I don't like fire, there's a lot of things resistance to fire. There's a lot of things that fire can burn and potentially create even more hazardous situations. Take it for what you will. You hurl a mote of fire at a creature object within range. Make a ranged spell attack against the target. On a hit, the target takes 1d10 fire damage. A flammable object hit by the spell ignites if it isn't being worn or carried. This spell's damage increases by 1d10 when you reach 5th level, 2d10, 3d10, 4d10 as it goes. And like I said before, this is available for sorcerers, wizards, and artificers. The cool thing about Firebolt is that I really want to hone in on is what I was talking about earlier, your environment, the atmosphere that you're playing in. If you have an artificer or you are the artificer, you drop this grease pit on the floor. Next thing, you run away, you see the enemy starts to slip in it. Depending on what your DM wants to do, if they're cool, the rule of cool. Please, DMs, use the rule of cool. Let your artificer burn the grease pile and see what it does to the enemy. Stuff like that's so awesome. And things that people don't think about. For instance, my players, and you all will see this when the episode releases. Please check out the main campaign if you haven't yet. A soon episode, they fight a water elemental, which, you know, it's a pretty classic D&D monster that will give our party a extreme challenge. But what they didn't know is that Firebolt against a water elemental does full damage. Fire turns water into steam in D&D, baby. It's magical. So it's just a really cool spell. It upgrades as you go. It can do massive amounts of damage later on. It's my just personal favorite also. But that's it for the top 5, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please, if you like what you see, subscribe, hit the alert icon. We are Chaotic Cast TV. Talk to you next time.